Hey everyone, Kevin here. In this, we're going to do sort of an evening news roundup. There's more news to cover today, and some of y'all this morning in a poll thought it might be kind of interesting to do a short summary of some of the things going on, keep it somewhat shorter and a little more casual in the evening. So here we go. One of the first things I wanted to touch on was this phone call between Joe Biden and Xi Jinping. And one of the things that it really made me realize was there was a conversation apparently about China and dumping green tech. They're specifically referring to solar panels. And I read a little bit in the Financial Times that prices for solar panels have fallen so dramatically that apparently some Europeans are now literally using solar panels as fencing. This was pretty remarkable. I haven't heard of this before, but by using them as fencing, you can actually install the solar panels more easily, and you could still get power out of them. So you're still making money by having them and having some reflective solar essentially on these panels and some sort of down angle solar. But apparently panels are getting so cheap that they're now being used as fencing. And there's a concern that as soon as we get solar panel pricing down under 11 cents per watt, less than half of what they were a year ago, that, well, actually below 15 cents is sort of that like red line threshold, the solar manufacturing doesn't become incentivized anymore. So really, let's try to explain that. When you have to resell a solar panel for less than 15 cents per watt, then your capacity of making money plummets. So think about this way. If you have a 400 watt panel and you're selling it for 15 cents a watt, it means you're selling the panel for $60. Last year, you were selling it for $120. Once you fall below that $60 threshold on a 400 watt panel, you're kind of at the point where, like, why do you even bother operating? It's just not profitable to invest in the technology anymore. So China is partly being blamed for that. Now, Chinese stocks are falling a little bit in sort of pre-market sort of their market hours, U.S. sort of futures markets, mostly because of what we saw coming out of the EV trade. Something weird is going on with electric vehicles, and it was something I was exploring a little bit on Twitter earlier today, on X. Some folks were wondering, hey, why is it that it seems like sales at BYD or EV sales at GM or EV sales at Tesla are down so poorly, but then you have vehicles like the ICE vehicles over at GM, for example, that are actually seeing growth in vehicles. Why would this happen? So, for example, GM auto sales are up 6% Q1 over Q1, year over year, right? And so you're looking at 594,000 deliveries. Yet electric vehicles at GM are down 20% year over year. Why is this? So there are two potentials. One potential is that electric vehicles are more interest rate sensitive than gas cars, but that's weird, right? I mean, why would electric vehicles be more interest rate sensitive? Or they're just as interest rate sensitive, and EVs are just for some reason receiving less adoption than hoped. Earlier today on the main channel, we did post some political sort of demographics on electric vehicle buyers. And there's some summaries that I put at ehack.com, which I think are really useful. And yes, we did have an earthquake in Taiwan. I could give a quick update on that. It does look like it was off the coast of Taiwan, some TSM fabs were actually evacuated along with their safety protocols. Not all of them were evacuated. And it looks like there are about 87,000 homes without power right now in Taiwan. You also have, it looks like here, staff at the Hsinchu and Southern Taiwan Sciences Parks were evacuated over at TSM. So a little bit of nervousness regarding that earthquake. 7.5, the largest earthquake they've had in about 25 years. But anyway, going back, I see your comments here. That's why I wanted to bring it up. Anyway, going into this right here, look at Gallup research. We covered some of this on the main channel, but I wrote down some more breakdowns. 4% of surveyed Americans own an EV. So you have to keep in mind, like, owning an electric vehicle is the minority of minorities. I mean, less than 1 in 20 people have an electric vehicle. 41% of Americans say they will not buy an EV, with 71% of Republicans saying they won't buy an EV. 6% of Democrats own, and 1% of Republicans. Presumably, you've got some independents in there. And then 53%, so about half of those over 55, refuse to consider an EV, and just over half of Republicans believe that EVs do nothing, not even a little bit, for the environment, whereas only 4% of Democrats think that EVs do nothing to help the environment. So this is actually really interesting. And we've looked at sort of batteries in the past, and A Tesla, when it's first manufactured, is actually less clean for the environment than an ICE vehicle. However, that offsets usually within about the first year when you fuel using gasoline. Usually within about a year, a Tesla ends up being cleaner for the environment than a gas vehicle when you consider gasoline versus that battery manufacturing. So that was something that was interesting as well. That came up sort of in the day, so we saw that. We did have JPM indicate, so JP Morgan Chase, they indicated that outright short positions in U.S. Treasuries rose the most since the start of the year. And part of that was because, well, the data we're getting, like the ISM's data we got yesterday, the JOLTS report this morning, jobs reports expected. I mean, tomorrow we get ADP, Friday we get a jobs report. But so far things have been holding up so well. JPM's sort of under the impression that clients are positioning for less cuts. And we are pricing in 65 basis points of cuts for this year now. That is less than the full 75 for 3 cuts. So the market is sort of, adjusting down those expectations, right? Bloomberg economists also did a piece today on what Donald Trump's 60% tariff from China would do to American inflation. They suggest that a 60% tariff for products imported from China would increase PCE, inflation, headline inflation, to 3.7% in 2025 and reduce GDP by 0.2%. So in other words, Bloomberg economists were like, please don't slap those sorts of tariffs on China and 10% tariffs on the rest of the world. It would be bad. Now, one thing that's not bad right now is the Atlanta Fed GDP index. I noticed this came out. Is this terrible earthquake in Taiwan going to affect Taiwan? Honestly, probably not. It sounds like, as a precaution, a few plants were evacuated, but it doesn't sound like there's any particular damage. In fact, it does say here, all staff are safe and factories are operating normally. Some machines were shut down, but we're working to restart them. Okay, so that update actually just came out. I'm going to just slap that on eHack really quick because I've been sort of throwing updates on eHack. So eHack.com, and so I'm going to throw this in here as the 1853 update, PT update. So again, for TSMC, all staff are safe and factories are operating normally. Some machines were shut down, but we are working to restart them. Okay, so I'm just going to put a little note here. Does not seem we will face any significant longer-term impacts on chips here. Okay, cool. Quick little update on that. Yeah, I'm just watching your comments, so kind of bouncing in there, but that's good to see. Okay, so the Atlanta Fed real GDP now figure came out. Atlanta Fed GDP now, right? It's the real GDP is generally measured in real terms, where you subtract inflation, and the estimate is actually up 2.8%. So you can see you've really almost exploded here on GDP. Really impressive. And a multivariate core, the latest update on multivariate core inflation did come in at levels for the normalized core trend. This is just core. Did come in at the highest levels that we saw in September of last year. So we're seeing a little bit of a move up here. Some other things to note that I didn't touch on this morning were the it's actually all energy. Let me update that. It's not just Megapack, it's Megapack and all energy. Let's write that really quick. So over at Tesla, Megapack and energy deployment were up. Megapack. Okay. Megapack and energy deployments were up only 4.2% year over year. I mean, at least it's not a negative like what you've seen at most of the solar or sort of green energy companies, but it is nominal, right? It's not the kind of growth that's actually going to bail Tesla out of the hole that it's in right now. Instead, really, what is expected, at least by Goldman Sachs, to potentially bail Tesla out of the hole is, quite frankly, the $25,000 vehicle. We did just have a $1,000 price increase on the Model Y that was scheduled for yesterday. That did go into effect. The question now, though, is how is that going to affect future growth? If that ends up crimping future growth and they have to go back and cut prices again, well, then they're really screwed. I will say I was a little disappointed with Galley's video. Let's see, do I have that handy here? Mostly because I like the guy. I think he's a good guy. Let me see here if I can grab it really quick. Oh yeah, here it was. Okay, so stand by one sec while I change the audio settings so I can actually hear it. I just have to go to that. All right, you should be able to hear this too then.
Tesla just reported 387,000 deliveries for Q1 2024.
Yeah.
The market's beefing with this. Tesla stock's down 5%. Why? This is down 8% year over year. So Tesla from last year actually...
Anyway, so Galley put together this 3-minute video. We're not going to watch the whole thing. But he put together this 3-minute video. And I generally don't spend a lot of time watching YouTube. But I did leave a comment on the video. So Galley talked about how, hey, you know, Tesla's got $20 billion in cash. This is a great company. Many of you already know that I have beef with people saying that Tesla has $20 billion in cash because it's not free cash. You know, it's kind of like saying, hey, you know, you have $10,000 in your bank account, but you have $10,000 in bills on your desk, or $9,500 in bills on your desk. You don't actually have $10,000 available to spend, because if you did spend that $10,000, you'd be negative $9,500, right? And so I think I get somewhat concerned when people fundamentally just sort of gloss over this idea that, you know, Tesla doesn't have any expenses. You know, consider, for example, Tesla's latest filing here for Q4, and what you'll find is you've got current liabilities here. Let's just add it together. 14,431, 9080, 2864. That's deferred revenue. I'm not going to subtract that from them. We'll take the current portion of debt, 2373. So I've got current debts, current bills on my desk of $25.8 billion. $25.8 billion of bills to pay. And I do have 12,696. I do have 29 of cash. So that suggests I've got free cash of about, what is that, about $3.5 billion. And maybe we'll have cash flow of $500 million. So maybe we have free cash of like $3.5 to $4 billion. You know, but that's very different from $20 billion of free cash. You know, $20 billion of free cash builds me 2 new gigafactories. $3.5 billion of free cash gets me through a recession. Maybe. Gets me through some more price cuts, you know what I mean? So I think that's very interesting. So, okay, good. So that was one thing that bothered me. I also wrote here, what about payables? Production down in Germany because of the attack. Yes, but inventories are up. So keep in mind, Galley argues that, oh, well, you know, one of the reasons we had problems was because of the attack in Germany. And I'm like, well, first of all, we were down for like, what, 9 days? I actually think we have that on ehack.com. Let me pull up ehack really quick. We wrote down exactly how many days it was. Let's see here. So presumably, if I just type in Berlin. Berlin disruptions, downtime in Berlin. These were forecasts. 2 shutdowns of its Berlin Gigafactory. Elon Musk visiting Berlin after the shutdown. Giga Berlin shutdown dates. End of December, end of January due to the Red Sea, and now March 5th through March 15th. A bit longer than expected due to the climate attack. I actually think they ended up reopening early because that was the forecast, I believe. Let me see when I wrote that. This was, yeah, I wrote that on the 10th. I'm pretty sure they actually ended up opening within about 7 or 8 days. So this was written on the 10th, and the projected was that they would reopen on the 15th. Pretty sure they opened early. But the reality is, even if it was 10 days or if it was 7 days, it's like, just because you had somewhat slower production at Giga Berlin doesn't affect demand. Now, there are a lot of people commenting on social media that, well, you know, inventories in transit are a problem. You know, there are way more inventories in transit than ever before. I don't find this argument to be, like, it doesn't resonate with me, I put it that way. So let me type in, let's just go to Tesla inventories. And there's plenty of this stuff on social right now. I just gotta find where I bookmark some of these. But inventories are rising for vehicles across the board for Tesla. Here it is. Cumulative, let's see here. Produced but not sold vehicles. So I bookmarked this just to look at it, and I want to find the data points because the chart doesn't actually reference a data point, which I was a little disappointed by. but it does suggest that you are seeing a rising number of unsold vehicles. Now, there is a suggestion that the lowest price Model 3 has a little bit of a delay in getting orders out and VINs out, but it does seem like you do have an inventory problem that's accruing. And the issue with this is, given that you were, somewhere between 0 to 25,000 vehicles for much of 2020 or 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22, and that's all of a sudden ballooned to a level that's 6 times as high, it does sort of beget the question that you're probably going to have to introduce new price cuts. And so this makes me a little bit concerned, because I think of Tesla as, okay, I want to see how April really goes, and like the next few weeks in April goes, because if they're not able to sell the Model Y as well with the new $1,000 higher price cut, because they tried pulling forward demand to Q1, which was a terrible quarter anyway, then they're going to have to drop the prices again on the Model Y, or delivery numbers are just going to get even worse, which is possible. So in that case, if they do end up lowering prices again, it basically screams to customers, okay, so when Tesla says the price is going to go up, it's clickbait. It's actually just going to end up going down again. So that's a little bit of a reputational problem that I think there's a risk Tesla could run into. Goldman Sachs actually encourages Tesla not to do that, but they are concerned that exactly that could happen. So I was a little disappointed I didn't hear about some of these comments from Gali. I was also a little bit disappointed that I heard the idea of like, hey, well, we're still growing. If we go back 2 or 3 years, we're still growing so well compared to there. Yeah, but remember, we were also sold this idea by Elon Musk that, hey, there's limitless demand for Teslas. And I'm not saying you should take a CEO's commentary to heart. I mean, everybody discounted what Elon said, but the reality seems to be the opposite. Like, I remember for a period of time, it's like, oh yeah, 50% growth rate. And we're like, no, it's way too high, 25 to 30%. And then it's like, then it's all of a sudden Tesla's at like, yeah, we're going to be at like 30%. Then I'm like, okay, well, what if we're at like 20% then, or worse, like 15%? And now it's like we're negative. So it's like, oh no, right? It's a little bit of an issue. And then again, arguing that Tesla's interest rate sensitive is somewhat challenged just by the fact that ICE vehicles are seeing vehicle growth, sales growth. And so this is a little weird. And it's not just GM's numbers that are reporting that as well. If we actually think I have some historical data on this. Again, we go to ehack.com. Let me just type it in, ehack.com. I think if I just type in vehicle sales, I want to say there was an update somewhere in here. I can't find it. Oh, yeah, there it is, right there. It's right here. Autos, Goldman Sachs. Seasonally adjusted annualized rate of car sales in February had 16 million. The consensus was 15.4. The February result is 10% higher, is up 10% year over year. And so there was this idea that could the car bottom be in? EV sales were up 15% year over year in February. EV mix was about 8% out of all of this. So I thought that was very interesting that they actually saw an increase here in EV. But Ford and GM were also trending up. So Tesla really got sort of lagged behind on some of these figures. Or left behind is a better way to phrase it. So anyway, that's a little bit on Tesla. You did have obviously some price cuts. I expect we're gonna get some more. Those are price targets, stock target price cuts. I would expect more to come as well. Let me see here. I'm gonna write. Let's go to. I want to see if EPS said. EPS has not really moved down yet. Maybe we moved down about 6 cents. We're at like 289 right now. I think earlier we were like 295 or something like that for EPS for 2024. But I expect over the coming days those numbers are going to get revised down even lower, unfortunately. Okay, good. So then we have, so we've talked Tesla, we've talked Taiwan earthquake, we talked tariffs on China from Trump, we talked JP Morgan on price cuts. Dave & Buster's did come in with a miss. So a little bit of Dave & Buster's pain here. Let's see here. Let's go to, let's actually play. Oh, look at that. So Dave & Buster's missed. The stock was down like 7%. And now all of a sudden the stock's actually up 7%. It's at $66. The stock's actually doing really well. This was as comp sales came down -7%. EPS missed at 88 cents. You had a revenue that slightly missed. But it looks like Dave & Buster's is conducting some form of a share buyback, which is creating some enthusiasm for the company. Despite the uncertain macro backdrop, everything we have seen and learned over the past several months has only strengthened our resolve and our ability to achieve 1 million adjusted EBITDA, 1 billion in adjusted EBITDA target in the coming years. Wow. So Dave & Buster's really pushing out of the hole, or at least trying to. So T.S. Lombard did talk about the economy still showing signs of strength from a tax deposit point of view. Corporate tax liability deposits were up 31% year over year. Thought that was really interesting. And that was compared to 0% growth in 2023 and negative 13% in 2022. So that was neat. Then you've got somebody here says, what if JB Straubel becomes the Tesla CEO and Elon focuses on SpaceX? Yeah, and X. Yeah, I mean, like I've always said before, I don't think that Elon should be completely removed from Tesla, but I do think that Elon should be shouldn't be CEO if he's going to be the public figurehead spouting political nonsense. Well, I shouldn't say political nonsense because a lot of people agree with exactly what Elon says, but it's just spouting political stuff. Then, you know, at the risk of alienating customers, you should probably just not be the figurehead of the company. You can still be a design inspiration or an innovator. You can still be on the conference calls. Could still be a board member, whatever. Again, I'm not suggesting Elon shouldn't be around. I think the world of him. I just think he's making a lot of big mistakes. But whatever. Did you see Trump is suing Truth Social? Yeah, he's actually suing two specific members over at Truth. He's basically suggesting that the way they structured the deal isn't good. Honestly, this is just my opinion, but I think Donald Trump is probably pissed off that he can't liquidate his stock right now and that he has a 6-month lockup because Trump isn't a stock guy. And so he probably goes and looks and says, oh, I've got X thousand shares of this company. Oh, that's great. I've got $1 billion. All right, let's sell. Hey, broker, sell. Broker's like, yo, man, you guys, when you formed the company, you committed to a 6-month lockup. What? What the hell? You're fired. You know, that's kind of what I think regarding Trump. So I think Trump wants to dump, and he can't. So now he's pissed, and so he's going to sue these people. And unfortunately, what will end up happening is there's a high likelihood that, the DJT will plummet to substantially lower values. And then when it plummets to substantially lower values, Trump is going to be even more enraged. And he's going to be like, I tried to sell it at the beginning when it was at the top, and you wouldn't let me because you wrote the documents in a scam way. Yeah. I mean, like, anyone in stocks knows that. But Donald Trump's not a stock guy. So I guess you got to read the contract, Trumpy. But anyway. What else? Okay, good. So then we've got somebody here comments, hey, Kevin, are you somewhat surprised as to why Tesla didn't go down as much as it could have by these terrible numbers? No, not really, because you have to think that the Wall Street numbers for Q1 have really been forecasting Q1 pain and a recovery thereafter. What remains to be seen now is, will the recovery manifest? So if we start getting more price cuts from Tesla, as in vehicle price cuts, that's when you ought to be concerned. That's when you probably ought to freak out because you go, that's a very big problem because it just means that, you know, their strategy really isn't working. Now, the amount that they're spending on advertising, I expect is still relatively small. I will say I did take FSD for a spin with Jack, and it's still having issues at certain parts, and I find it very disappointing. And I did the test a few times, but I find that at certain intersections, it just doesn't want to use the right lane because it sees a bike lane and then it tries to go in the straight lane to turn right and wants to kind of cut off other traffic. I'm like, This is very bizarre for version 12.3.3 to be doing this. And so that is, to be clear, I'm 12.3.3 is what I'm on right now. So I think that's very interesting. Apple did release a new update a beta update for their Vision Pro that basically allows you to have your sort of FaceTime calls, kind of the head sort of floating in the sort of virtual reality world, which is kind of cool. I generally don't download the beta updates because they break too many things, but it did sound pretty cool. By the way, we're on the note of the Trump Media Group. Trump Media Group showcased, per the Financial Times print edition, just about $751,500 in revenue in Q4. Their annual report shows that they make about $1 million in revenue per quarter. That's really bad, considering their R&D costs are $4 million, their sales and marketing are $10 million. Sorry, their R&D is $9.7 million. Their sales and marketing is $1.2 million, and their G&A is 8.8. Add those together, you get 10. And then they've also got these substantial interest expenses that of like $39 million, which are really explosive, and they have to do with the convertible offerings that they've done. So they're basically paying substantially higher debt outlays on previous money they've borrowed. It's just not great. It feels like financing to get by, and then having to pay a lot of interest with money you don't have. But anyway, gold's obviously at this like crazy all-time high, likely due to fears in the Middle East. Oil prices stabilizing inflation at a higher level, which isn't good. You remember Loretta Mester came out today, and she's like, hey, we might end up settling at a 4% mark for, a 3% FOMC rate, neutral rate, so, as opposed to 2.5%. That's not good. That's not good at all. So I don't like to hear that. It just means, again, higher for longer. Somebody's asking about my thoughts on Amazon. Yeah, look, I think Amazon and Apple have probably the greatest potential for actually functionally using AI, like functional output for artificial intelligence, whether it's in logistics, minimizing workforce required, actual features for people in their daily lives, mostly because I think the vast majority of people don't use AI regularly. Oh, but anyway, so where was I regarding these deliveries? Yeah, and so the cut on Tesla. Unfortunately, there are just so few catalysts for Tesla's price to go up in the near term. There's just the chance that you just have this like sideways trend or bleed. You really need guidance from Elon, and the stock could rocket pretty quickly. Obviously progress on the Model 2 could rocket the stock, or just guidance like, hey, look, here's our plan, here are our margins. Maybe we'll get that at the earnings call this time. But remember last earnings call? They just iced us. They gave us nothing, so that's really disappointing. Something else that I've been watching just from the Bitcoin world, I'd like to punch over to this for a moment. So I was watching Bitcoin last night, and I noticed Bitcoin dropped all the way down right to this line. It was almost perfect, which was kind of remarkable. And I always think it's wild when live you see something move directly to your support line. And I'll show you what this line is in a moment. But you'll see we got rejected once we fell below it here. Rejected again, and now we're kind of stuck under it. So 2 rejections and a bounce, which is pretty remarkable. Somebody here says, the Baxton says, I gave you that line. Well, thank you. And so where this came from is when you zoom out on the day chart, you could go over here to about 2.6, mark sort of the bottom here. You could mark 226, and you could mark 320, and that's the line that when we zoom in on, we just broke below right now. And so I think that's somewhat remarkable because you are getting this convergence right here. And so a lot of folks are suggesting we're setting up for either a break up or break down. Of course, you could sort of measure the directionality and the volatility here to anticipate whether that'll be a break up or a down. But it's very interesting. It's probably just algorithmic trading, frankly. But again, you see that on the 5-minute line, And so I always think it's so interesting when the lines are drawn and then you actually see them function. It's pretty cool. So then the next thing we have is, let's see, yeah, Dave & Buster's was up. We didn't have too many post-market movers, I don't think. Intel was down 4%. I want to see what happened with Intel. And then we did see Dave & Buster's obviously move. Let's see what went on with Intel. Somebody here says, keep an eye on the Powerwall energy storage deployment. It's going to be juicy for the company IMO. Well, I agree. It'll be juicy in the long term, just like, you know, solar will be juicy for Enphase maybe in the future, but I don't know, not right now. Intel expects to be able to reduce, what is this? Let's see here. Intel says about 30% of wafers are outsourced currently. They expect to be able to reduce that to 20%. They say the use of external foundries is peaking this year and next. So in other words, it's still taking time for them to actually get their factories up. That's probably why they're getting whacked. Targeting 30% adjusted operating margins at their foundries. They're setting their long-term financial targets. And basically their forecasts are just still for declining revenues. And so you're still not really able to turn around revs at Intel. So that's a little unfortunate. I think that's why you're getting a little bit of pain here. Yeah. Okay, good. So next we have, let's see, what do we have next? Next, we talked about Trump Media Group. We talked about Gallup. Oh, yeah, the disaster of what happened in Israel. This was really disgusting. I hate seeing stuff like this. So you had about 7 aid workers that were killed in a convoy, including these 2 individuals who were posting videos about their aid distribution. The vehicle was clearly marked from the roof as being an aid convoy, and the convoy was registered with the IDF. They were coordinating their movements with the IDF. So the IDF knew exactly what was going on. They knew where this convoy was. The IDF argues they believed that a gunman, some form of suspect, was on this convoy, and therefore they struck the convoy, killing the aid workers, including 1 American. 3 missiles hit the convoy. Apparently, after the first missile hit, they called and said, hey, stop shooting at us, basically, and they still launched 2 more missiles. It's really sad to think that, you know, a missile, you could be driving along in a dangerous area under the protection of the IDF, and then you basically get bombed by the IDF. So, it's very devastating. Of course, the pro-Israeli argument is that we are going to, or we are blaming Hamas for this. But obviously they were Israeli rockets. But they're essentially just arguing that all deaths as a result of this conflict are the result of Hamas. And others argue this, and they say, well, the level of Israeli exacerbation of the response actually creates substantially more casualties than Hamas could ever even dream to have the capability of fighting. Who knows? You know, these are arguments on both sides. And I'm probably not going deep enough into the arguments anyway. So if you have comments, feel free to leave your own. But some people are going as far as arguing that Israel wanted to limit food distribution in Israel, in Gaza, or well, in the Gaza Strip, basically, from Israel or from other countries. Because now, as a result of this, the UAE has suspended its involvement in aid, and 240 tons of aid that was coming from the World Central Kitchen were diverted to Cyprus because they're just like, you know what, we're done. We're done supporting Gaza. But well, I shouldn't say a lot. There are some people who actually think that's exactly what Israel wanted. They want less aid going to Gaza. They want the Gazans to suffer more to try to root out the rest of Hamas. So this is a really hard one, and it's, you know, in terms of like picking sides or whatever, I don't like to do that. I just try to provide perspective from both sides. I just think it's terrible. Like, personally, I look at this, I go, you know, food aid workers getting killed and targeted in a convoy, it's disgusting. Like, there needs to obviously be an investigation into why a mistake like that could happen, because it clearly was a mistake. The gunman wasn't on the convoy, so what happened with the intel? Now, don't get me wrong, the CIA has screwed up as well, right? I mean, we had that drone strike, the Hellfire missile that blew up a father coming home to his children who were greeting him at his car. Destroyed the family, killed like, I don't know, 7 or 8 family members and kids and the dad, everyone, with a Hellfire missile that struck the car because the CIA misidentified which white Toyota to strike. So, you know, it's just really sad. Anyway, all right. Somebody says, I live in Israel. Can I invest in HouseHack? Yes, you actually can. If you're an accredited investor, you just go to househack.com/2024 and international investors are accepted. Read the PPM. Okay, great. So, what else did we talk about here? I did an Apple versus Microsoft AI video. I encourage you to watch that. I think it's pretty cool. I talk about Apple's LLM piece and how they talk about having localized language networks and how this could work on device to basically bring smarter and better AI to your devices. And I think that's very, very fascinating. I think there's a real potential in Apple, mostly because look at the chart as well. You know, Microsoft is a company that now has a 20% larger market cap than Apple, and their net income is a fraction of what Apple's is. I have it written down over here somewhere. Let's see if I could find it here. It was the Microsoft versus Apple. Here it is. Here. Apple... let's see here. Microsoft nets $21.87 billion per quarter. Apple makes about 50% more money net, about 55% more. Yeah, Microsoft has a market cap 20% higher than Apple. And so I talk about what this has to do with services and otherwise in the video that I posted on the main channel. So be sure to check that out. So somebody here says Kathy Wood's buying Tesla like it's 2020 again. Yeah. What is Kathy Wood buying Tesla stock? Yeah. Lot of Tesla buys. So frequently, one of the things that sort of, excuse me, promotes actually Kathy's funds are trades, right? When they send the email alerts saying, hey, look, we're buying the dip on this stock or whatever, especially when the stock is, you know, has such a strong following like Coinbase or Tesla or SoFi. The emails really serve as marketing, and it's wild because you know, just by sort of operating, you can encourage people to share. Hey, look, I'm part of the Buy the Dip group or whatever. So it's actually great marketing. You know, whether it's the best financial decision, I don't know. Obviously, Kathy thinks so. I'm not going to dispute her opinion. Anyway, here you've got a little bit of footage just on X of what that earthquake felt like in areas of Taiwan. It's pretty crazy, honestly. This is a 7.5. You're in, you know, what looks like a bus or a subway here. Probably a bus. That's crazy. So, pretty wild. There's some more videos and clips of what's going on here. Some buildings being shaken off their foundations. Yeah, that doesn't look too good. So, yikes. I hope the people can get out of those. Good Lord, that thing looks like it's about to tip over and collapse. It's just not good. So yeah, a little bit of a oopsie doopsie over there. Yeah, on a 7.5 or in Taiwan. Pretty substantial. But it doesn't actually seem like you have a very heavy amount of damage or carnage compared to what sometimes you see when these earthquakes happen, and you just have a massive, massive loss of life. So hopefully the loss of life, if any, is quite limited, or ideally zero. So, okay, great. So we talked about, it's now been downgraded to a 7.4, by the way. Some waves ended up hitting in Japan. So these are some of the updates we got here from the day. I'm trying to see if there are any other comments here. Why would I buy a Tesla when insurance is more expensive? Nah, you just got to get the Tesla insurance. It's a lot easier then. Yeah, that used to be a big problem. Used to be a big problem. A very big problem. You had to use like Geico, and you had to go to certified repair shops, and they were far away. It was a pain in the butt. So let's see here. What else? Curious what your take is regarding Barron Sector Energy. You know, that's actually really funny. I was reading that on the plane this weekend. I had the paper edition. I usually keep the paper editions, right? Oh, it's upstairs. And I was reading about that this weekend. I'm like, I should really look into some of these. I didn't end up looking into them, but I do think there's a potential for... I mean, I'm a big fan of nuclear energy. I think it's the cleanest form of energy that exists. I think we could really make like Europe and just bury the rest over, the leftovers, miles and miles below the Earth's surface in concrete bunkers. I think they say somewhere like this much, like a cube, like this size of nuclear waste would basically give you enough, would cover your energy consumption for your entire life. Like it's a very, very nominal amount per person relative to like the gasoline or whatever that you might need. So I thought that was neat. So someone says, look at Elon's tweet reply to Ashley. You know, I always get a little nervous when somebody says, look at Elon Musk's tweet replies. But we'll take a look at them. So you say Ashley, eh? Okay, let's see here. See, the problem is there's so many tweets. It's gonna take forever to see this. Again, it's his platform. So I mean, if I had my own platform like X, I'd be on it all the time. Well, I guess I got eHack. Yeah, I don't see where that reply is that you have. So anyway, didn't he block you? I'm not blocked. Ashley Vance. Okay, let's find it. Ashley Vance. You know, it takes real skill to be blocked by Elon and then unblocked. Yeah, I see Ashley Vance, but I don't know which one maybe he replied to. Anyway, so let's see here. Third and fourth nuclear generations can use their waste from the first and gen as fuel. Wow, that's pretty crazy. It's basically reusing there. Plan to reinvest in Tesla at some point? Yeah, at some point, absolutely. I don't know what that point is yet. You know, my initial thesis was that you could tax loss harvest pretty easily between like March 11th and April 11th, just because I thought we would have poor catalysts, like no good catalysts, and if anything, just negative catalysts. Yeah, so far it seems like that's ended up being true. So it makes for an easy sort of like in and out if you just want to get all the way back in, save a few bucks, and take some tax loss harvesting. Yeah, the big question is going to be, does it make sense to get in before or after earnings? Well, one of the things you could do is you could just, you know, once you get to your tax loss date, you could play options to hedge you either way and just bridge you out another, 2 or 3 weeks at probably a relatively small cost. So, as an example, if you had $100,000 in Tesla and you were worried, excuse me, you were worried the stock was going to rally $20,000 worth, so 20%, then you could potentially pay, let's say, $5,000 on some options that would earn you $20,000 if the stock did rally 20%. So now you're basically paying $5,000 to protect you against that. Now, does that make sense on a 100K portfolio to spend $5,000? Probably not. Is it probably better to spend 1% on a hedge? Probably. You spend $1,000 to try to prevent a 20% loss in movement, right? That might be an option, pun intended, obviously. So, yeah, anyway. Okay. Ashley Vance, spelled differently now, okay? What did... I don't see it. I don't know what y'all keep talking about with some Ashley here. But anyway. Yeah, okay. Yeah, when can we donate for the mayor run? Yeah, you gotta watch the end of that video. But appreciate you asking. So, my spouse is threatening to sell my prosthetic lead to pay our bills since I invested everything into Intel. Well, when did you invest into Intel? Because the thing's actually been up since we really started talking about it. We started talking about the sucker around $28. And, it's been doing fantastically since then. Of course, it's had bumps on the road, but I mean, if you invested at $52, yeah, I mean, I guess that's on you. I mean, I've been targeting $65 as a value on this sucker. 52 wasn't enough to say all right, sell everything, but it looks like it might take a minute longer to get to the full $65. So okay, what else? So selling covered calls, yep, that's a good option too. What do you think about TMF? TMF is a really tough play right now. That's a very, very tough play right now because you're betting on rates coming down. I don't know. Just DM'd. Okay, thanks. I don't know that actually is the right play. X tweet shared this. Okay. Probably my single favorite thing about 2024 is that, who's that? Is that John Carmack, CTO of Oculus VR, is sitting in front of a computer near Dallas working to make AI unlike any other that almost no one is paying attention to this. Okay. Oh, that Elon is paying attention to this. Oh, okay. Interesting. So, yeah, look, there's going to be a huge industry around AI. There's no question about that. Huge industry around AI. It's going to be wild. But it's going to take a while. It's going to take a while. So, Neg. I don't even know what Neg is. Rivian is a fantastic and beautiful company. Newegg. A beautiful, beautiful car. It's great. But you know, the problem is when do you get to profitability? That's the big challenge, right? So that's a big challenge. Yeah, we did touch on Intel already, and it's dropping after hours. And let's see, there's another comment. Will you be covering Powell tomorrow? What time is he expected to speak tomorrow? Let's see. I usually look at the schedule of sort of Fed speakers in the morning, but I'll pull it up right now and see if I can get the schedule. And let's see here. The Fed speak. Fed speak. Yeah, that'll take a moment. I'll get this up. Speeches. There we go. Testimony. Okay. Schedule. Speeches. Calendar. Here we go. Okay, so 4-3, we have Bowman. Oh, you're right. Powell at Stanford Business on the Business, Government, and Society Forum. Economic Outlook is the panel. Well, that should actually be pretty good. Yeah, that's at 9:10. Yeah, that actually might be worth covering. Just see if there are any other sort of notes there on Powie Wowie. Somebody says, I love trolling Kevin. Well, everybody does. So, somebody says, I don't believe Elon blocks people. He doesn't believe in censorship. Oh, he blocks people. He definitely blocks people. I could say with certainty he blocks people. House Hack Share Cert ETA. Hopefully the end of the month. What we're doing is we're finishing our audit. And the good news is if you're worried about like your allocation, you can always just email us. Like we could just read you, let your money's confirmed off the cap table. You don't really need a share certification to prove that because you already have a contract, right? The share cert is just sort of like a shiny metal that's like, yep, you got that contract. So, but it'll come. We're hoping into Q1. Problem is we've got finishing the Reg A took way longer than expected with the broker dealer we had to use. And that was almost completely out of our control. And then now we have our audit, and then we have warrants due on the 8th. So there's a lot going on that kind of messes up the cap table a little bit. I shouldn't say messes up, sort of evolves the cap table a little bit. So end of the month. We are getting a lot of interest, by the way, in people investing in sort of the House Hack Mini Fund, DST, which is basically a way of you being able to sell your real estate, 1031 into mini funds, and then eventually the goal is that you end up with some form of liquid shares. That's the goal. Obviously, there's a lot of detail here missing, and this isn't a pitch for a product that fully exists right now, but it's something we're building out, and it's really exciting because it really means you could stay invested in real estate, not pay taxes, still get cash flow and appreciation, and not pay taxes as you move from owning your own real estate to just owning a slice of the real estate that we manage for you, which that's kind of cool. So not only do I think that's kind of cool, but a lot of people are hitting us up, and you can do that at ir@househack.com. Got to get the email straight. So anyway, okay, that's about all I have today. So thank you for coming to sort of an evening update. I had a feeling, like I asked this morning if I should do an evening style video, like a morning and evening thing. And I was thinking, well, I kind of already do a morning thing. It's the 5:25 in the morning market open. Oh, look, wow, the camera's been on so long, I just lost a camera. That's crazy. That camera's been on for 14 hours today. And it actually a little more than 14 hours, and it just pooped out on me. But anyway, crazy timing. So, what was I going to say? Oh, yeah, some people were mentioning it'd be cool if we did sort of like an evening news update. And so that's really what this is. So if you found this useful, I know it's longer than what I thought it would be, but if you watch it back on 2x, it's like 25 minutes. That's not that bad for a lot of stuff that we covered. I think it's pretty valuable. Obviously, if there's less to cover, we'll make it a little less long. So anyway, with that, I'm going to push the button now. and I'm going to look at Bitcoin in the meantime. Even though I'm a licensed financial advisor, real estate broker, and becoming a stockbroker, this video is neither personalized financial advice nor real estate advice for you. It is not tax, legal, or otherwise personalized advice tailored to you. This video provides generalized perspective, information, and commentary. Any third-party content I show should not be deemed endorsed by me. This video is not and shall never be deemed reasonably sufficient information for the purpose of evaluating a security or investment decision. Any links or promoted products are either paid affiliations or products or services which we may benefit from. I personally operate and actively manage ETF and hold long positions in various securities, potentially including those mentioned in this video. However, I have no relationship to any issuers other than HouseHack, nor am I presently acting as a market maker. Gosh, that chart on Tesla is just so embarrassing. And look at that. Suckers, just straight. It's just so sad. This company with so much potential is just going through 3 years of hell. You know, it's almost like you can't point the finger, but like I know there are a lot of people who are just mad at you know, Elon. It's like, what the hell? Like, this isn't just rates. This is in part some mismanagement. So some people are upset. Anyway, all right, folks. Thanks so much for being here, and we'll see you in the next one.
Go f yourself.